So I want to show another two things while I'm here. One, I want to let everyone know that if you want to have a chart where all of your time frames change at the same time, then you want to check this interval chart, right? What that does is I can go here with this scanner that I have, and everything will stay the same, except all of them are now on the 2 hour time frame. And that is such a cool shortcut to be able to have a scanner and be able to kind of sift through a number of different time frames, right? So if you wonder, like, how do I find setups, you can say, well, I'm going to have my scan chart with about eight different projects with my favorite algos. I'm going to set up all the DIIO algos. I'm going to have pressure lines, volatility clouds, breakout bars, and movement monitors all set. I'm going to go ahead and have them in channels. And I'm just going to, have my favorite algos set up, right? Kind of as a template, which you can do templates as well. And then once I do that, all I want to do to make sure that I can shift from the 4 hour to the 12 hour to the 1 day to literally look for setups in any given time frame is I want to use that interval setting, right? Let's make sure everybody has that. Interval setting, very, very useful. And that's what you do there. And if you want to do the same thing where you sync the symbol in a layout, then you click that, right? And that is more useful in a chart like this one, right? So in this chart, you can see that I have symbol checked off, right? And what that allows me to do is, instead of changing the asset one by one, like I would have to, I'd have to change it here, 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 here. I'd have to change it 8 different times. But instead of doing that, when I have symbol synced, I can literally just find a setup. I find a setup in my alt scanner, right? Let's say the setup happens to be sand. I can go look at sand on one of my midterm charts or one of my micro charts, or both, right? A lot of times we'll look at both. And I can change the chart where all 8 of them now change at the same time. And so I can now look at sand on, this happens to be a midterm chart, but I can look at sand on my midterm chart, and I can look at sand and I can review it instantly on the 1 day, the 2 day, the 3 day, the 4 day, 5 day, and so forth and so on, all the way into the 2 week. And so now I have perspective from all these different time frames for how I might want to evaluate sand for any given opportunity, right? And so that's kind of a neat thing. So I want to just kind of share that's definitely something to consider. And so I might look at sand and I might be bearish on certain time frames. I might say, oh, red with blue movement monitor, this one also pretty scary. We may be undergoing a correction. It could absolutely last a while, right? But at the same time, it is interesting that on this larger scale time frame for sand, we have not been green, so to speak, since the last bull cycle for sand, right? Where the price went from 49 cents, 38 cents, whatever this price is, something really low, right? Somewhere down in here, 24 cents to when it went to $8.46, right? So the fact that it opened up a bit bullish is kind of neat, right? And then if I want to, I can also expand it, and I can really look at it even more, right? And if I want to, I can even take away the pressure lines, and I can get an idea of just where sand stands. And so I can ask myself, hey, is sand something interesting that I want to look at? Is it mimicking what I see over here? And it's like, well, no, not yet, because you don't see a green movement monitor. But one of the conditions has been set, right? The stage has been set for the volatility cloud to have at least taken it out of some degree of trend. based on the volatility cloud expectations. Um, and so that's kind of neat in itself, right? Just that you know that part one, if you're a person that's really interested in sand, part one has kind of like shifted in your favor. Okay, now I need to look for the second part of the equation, which is maybe the actual movement monitor. Maybe I need the movement monitor to change, at least to green. And then maybe when it changes to green, I can consider a position, right? Maybe green on orange, something of that nature. So I wanted to kind of share that with you as well. And then when you have the triple stack of confluence, which maybe the 2 week is too large of a time frame to look at. So we'll go back, and then we'll go and we'll look at something like the 1 week, and we'll see if we don't have a bit more perspective here on the 1 week. We will remove the pressure lines. And this one I think is a little bit more interesting, right? If we kind of zoom out a little bit, expand a little bit, I think it gives us a few things to consider. Now, the 1 week, which is a pretty large time frame, we can kind of get some historical perspective. We didn't ever really get orange on orange over green here on the 1 week. Even though we felt, like the bull market could be starting, maybe it is starting, who knows, the halving's coming up, ETFs launched, somewhere in here. There was a lot of hoopla about the ETFs, but we've never seen orange on orange over green for sand since this began. And so, somebody might want to use the alarms to set orange movement monitor for sand when the 3-day goes orange or when the 1 week goes orange. If somebody would have set the exact same over here, they would have at a minimum gotten notified somewhere in here, somewhere in the sub $3 range, and they would have been able to ride it all the way to $8, right? I mean, just based on how that actually happened. The first time that the weekly went orange on orange was actually here. So somebody could have made the decision to enter here, low leverage, and maybe consider using the volatility cloud for the 1 week as their stop loss. And that's where we get to measuring asymmetry a bit, right? So somebody could literally come in and start to use the asymmetry calculator, which is a valuable piece of information. So somebody said, well, I see orange here. It was orange there. It seems like we're in an uptrend. I'm going to enter here. I don't want to miss out, let's just say, and I don't really encourage that, but maybe they say, I don't really want to miss out, so I'm kind of curious, what can I do? So maybe something like this would be a possibility. And then you have to ask yourself, do I really want to lose 30% of my position? Well, maybe you control your risk with absolute position size, right? Which means I just don't enter that large of a position on something like sand. But if I do, I'm going to enter it here at the first sign of it touching my movement monitor, or a person who's more conservative, who wants a better entry, and who is willing to settle with not having an entry. That's a very important thing. A person who wants an entry, but they're willing to settle for, hey, I didn't catch my entry. That's okay because I did this with a number of different assets. That person could literally set themselves up on something very challenging like sand when they first saw that orange on orange with volatility cloud expectations for their entry. I don't always see it go to this. That's the purpose of a volatility cloud. You could easily get stopped out on this, which is why we're not really big proponents of extreme leverage. But if I was wanting to show someone how well it performed, should somebody happen to have taken this trade, let's just see how well it performed, right? I'm gonna hide it. I'm gonna hide the stats so we can see it, and we can kind of verify that it held. Okay, there it is. In this case, and it's not always this way, I want to reiterate that, but in this case, somebody could have been this tight on entry for sand. And as you can see, let me pull my pen back up. And as you can see, technically, this would have entered. This one would not have. So if this happened to be the lowest it went, this person would have missed out on their entry, and maybe they would have been bitter and upset at themselves for years to come because they almost entered sand at, 60 cents or 58 cents, and it went up to $8.50, and so they're bitter about it. But I think if you can remain emotionally neutral and just know that you're playing a game of risk mitigation and doing your best, right, with statistical probability, you're trying to make intelligent decisions, then maybe this would be perfect. And on occasion, you catch a nice asset that does that. You're okay with missing it, because missing it is not the same thing as losing money. And then lastly, if you did catch it, you would be risking, which is extreme, but you'd be risking less than 4%. So this is almost like a spot trade, right? But you'd be risking 4%. You could have even 2x leveraged it with a smaller position and risked about 7%, right? 7, maybe 8%, depending on slippage. And so it's very, very interesting. Let me turn that off here. So it's very, very interesting that that's possible. And what's really amazing about that, again, a person just has to be willing to risk, potentially losing. But if they did, so where's I'm looking for my my markers here.